Okay. Well, like I said, thank you everybody for showing up. Let's get this show on the road. There won't be really too many slideshow presentations going on over here. Just to kind of go over a little bit of the agenda and some backdrop information. So we're going to actually just jump right into the demo. We have some things kind of set up to sort of increase a little bit of the immersion. And then we're just going to talk a little bit about our ongoing self-help and learning how to use guns. So for those of you that missed the previous webinars, and if you get some time to check them out, you definitely should. But a quick little recap is we're talking a little bit about the cyber landscape of how not just defenders, but offenders as well too, like these attackers, these adversaries, they are also reliant on a lot of tools as well too. And so we've kind of had this ongoing theme from the Top Gun movie is, what we do here at Level Effect is we really put an emphasis here on being able to switch from missiles to guns and go in manual mode, know how to look for these things and not be so reliant. When things go wrong, you still need to know how to navigate and know what to do. So what's going to happen today is this is going to be a follow-up from the last webinar that we had talking about how adversaries use some of those common tactics in that presentation. So the scenario that I'm going to be rolling into right now myself, you're going to see some windows kind of pop on and off my screen. And I'll kind of narrate a little bit about what I'm doing. And feel free to ask questions as I go through. I'll try not to go too quickly, and I'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing as an adversary and how I'm using some very common attack methods. Namely, we will start off with using something called OSINT, which is open source intelligence gathering tools. And it's not necessarily just tool-based, but rather a methodology of being able to use open source, publicly available methods, tools, software, you name it, to gather information and intelligence on an intended target. In this case, me being the adversary with my red background, I am going to be targeting Level Effect, and I have been up in the early hours of the night, and I have found a user. I found an employee that works at Level Effect by the name of Rob, and he has posted something interesting on his LinkedIn. So let's go take a look and see exactly what I have discovered. So kind of going through what we see over here, Rob's got his nice little profile. Seems like a nice guy. However, he's posted some information that could be helpful for me as an attacker. And from what I've noticed over here, he's saying that he's honored to be the employee of the month. And thanks for the new earbuds, Greg being his boss. Now, this is pretty common. A lot of people put recognition on their LinkedIn profiles. And for me, I've got some pretty good information right now. I know he's been the employee of the month, so he's probably got a lot of good reputation at the company, well known, a good performer. And I know that he is thanking Greg, which I've done a little bit of background investigation on. I've noticed that that is his direct report. He's also bought some new earbuds. This might seem kind of harmless, right? Well, for me, this is exactly what I'm looking for. This is information that I'm going to now craft into a bit of a spoofed attempt to be able to see if I can get someone who might be working with Rob to click on something. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys exactly what I'm going to be trying to execute over here. I went ahead and I have drafted and created this little policy. Now, this is something that anyone with a little bit of word skill and expertise can go ahead and craft. This looks like a pretty legitimate form. That's what I'm hoping for. I've put some very formal writing in here so that you might not guess what it is. And I've really encouraged the usage of the user being able to click macros. Now, for those of you in the audience, if you're not too familiar, you might actually have already worked with a lot of these things inside of your organization. Excel files, Word docs, forms and templates, and maybe someone might just be telling you to enable content over here. And that's exactly what I'm hoping for. And I'm hoping that these steps over here is going to outline in detail exactly what I want the user to do and enable content so that I have some embedded code that will be executed within inside this Word document. I've also created a little visual basic Word button over here to sort of simulate the experience that I want the person to upload it to HR. This is just a simple, pretty standardized prize acceptance form. I'm throwing in things here like referencing the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which essentially almost all companies, organizations to any degree and size are going to be trying to follow at some point to make sure that all of their books are in line. I want them to see that and feel like they need to get this completed. Like this is very legitimate. This is something professional. It's required. And then I'm specifying some of the companies like Amazon, Target, Best Buy, again, kind of reinforcing some of that importance that this is very real. And I want them to go through the steps and fill its information. And I don't want any further interaction. I don't want the user to now send this to someone, print it and leave it somewhere. I want them to believe that there's a button over here that they're going to click and it's going to submit it to HR, and this is all fine and dandy. So what does this actually look like? Well, inside of this little developer tab over here, you can go inside and you can actually embed some code into this Word document. And this is what's called a macro. So I'm going to be able to open this up right now. And what's actually happening over here is I've got a really, really simple execution script. And what this is going to run is some encoded rather, PowerShell commands that is going to hopefully be able to trigger and deploy a C2 agent. And the C2 agent is essentially just a remote access Trojan. It's dropping a rat for those of you that know that terminology. And hopefully that's going to help me connect and get inside the system. So this is sort of what I'm setting up. This is what I'm hoping for. And macros files are pretty well accepted, and they're going to go and bypass through a lot of mail gateways and filtering software. A lot of rules, they're going to just be bypassed as well too. A lot of organizations just have to accept that macros files are just part and parcel of the organization. So this has a pretty surefire bet to go right through and hit somebody. So the next stage in the game is I'm going to be going ahead and I'm going to be sending this. This is what I've crafted so far. So like I said, I know that Greg is his direct report. So I went ahead and I have crafted this little email. I've attached the form over here, and I'm hoping for quick action. I'm hoping that, this email is received, and I'm putting some urgency on it, because the longer that this process goes on, the longer that this is going to be triggered or caught. Something might catch this. This isn't the most well done tactic. It's not that sophisticated, but it happens all the time, and it does go through often enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some urgency and pressure on this and say that, I'm William Missler. I'm the HR manager over here at Level Effect. Hi, Greg. Just a reminder, we still haven't received a prize acceptance form submitted for Rob's Employee Recognition Award. So this is a real event. Greg was part and parcel of it. He's aware. This is something that actually has happened. And this is coming from HR. There is an urgency on this. And I'm hoping that maybe as manager or middle manager, that he will want to act on this right away. You definitely don't want to fall behind in any type of compliance paperwork and policies. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm saying, please ensure that this is completed and returned to us by end of day. Greg, in reality, please don't click on this, but I'm going to send it to you anyways, because this is what I am hoping you to accept and click on. So I'm going to send that. I'm not going to get any bounce either as well too. And I'm going to leave that going. Now, there's a couple things that are going to be happening in the back end, and I'll kind of leave that for a moment. See, Rob, you're typing an answer over there. Yeah. So we had someone shoot a question about what about Windows Defender or the corporate AV? They may block the malicious macro or the download of the malicious payload, right? So Rob's typing away over there. He's saying, sorry, clicked the wrong button there. Enterprises don't run Defender. They're using another EDR, which probably might have a chance of catching this, but in all honesty, it's not going to a lot of the time. I'm going to get a little image that I saw on it was a report that was mentioning just some of the series of EDRs that are out there. And what this is essentially in the same lines of, this is sort of like that HTA macros type of attack, injection attack. I'm trying to inject malicious code. And I think once you see that image, you're going to see that a lot of the EDR solutions out there still miss it. So you might think that it's secure, but remember what I said. A lot of the documents out there, especially like for finance and accounting, a lot of them have to have macros embedded, okay? So that means that the EDR solutions are not going to traditionally look into it. That means if it's a macros file, they're not going to figure out that it could be malicious, likely until execution. So this is a very good indicator that it's going to go through mail gateways, it's going to go through inboxes, and it's really up to the user. And this is why you see like PDF files, Excel files hit your inbox quite often. And you may not guess it, but this is essentially the same thing. What I've done, and I've embedded some macros, those files likely have macros as well too. So hopefully you're not opening those, because there's a pretty good chance your EDR solutions are not going to catch this. All right. So that being said, let's give a little moment over here. And I am going to bring my other window in, and I'm going to introduce you to what has actually happened now at this point. All right, there we go. So I have been informed that I have a grunt activated. I'm going to refresh my screen real quick to give you guys a better view of what's actually going on here. What I'm actually using here, this is our virtual machine that we have for our courses, our Cyber Defense Analyst Bootcamp, the foundations as well too. I'm doing this inside of this VM. This is where this is all triggered. There's a lot of backend stuff, making sure that this is working just as expected. Now, what has happened here is I'm using what's called Covenant, and this is just an open source free command and control framework. And what I've done now is I've sent that email out. It looks like the user has clicked on it, so it looks like I'm hoping Greg clicked on it, because I have been informed that this grunt has been enabled. And the grunt is what Covenant refers to as the C2 agent. So my remote access Trojan has been effective. It's successful. This is perfect. Now, normally I'd be going a lot faster on doing things I'm doing, but I'm trying to explain a little bit as I go along, because I know, just looking at the audience, I'm seeing that there are some newer users over here. I really want to make sure these explanations are clear in what I'm doing. So again, Covenant, it's a C2 command and control framework. Anyone can download this. This will literally take you about a minute to download, and you should be off to the races. You can just run it after that with a little bit of configuration. Now I can click on this grunt, and I can start interacting with the machine. And what I'm trying to really get across over here is to see what happened. So let's task this. So it looks like it was effective. It looks like it was clicked on and it deployed this grunt. It's active, it's live. What's interesting is I'm actually hitting a dev account. So I'm going to assume, since I sent it to Greg, I'm hoping that it was him, or maybe forwarded off to somebody. But whatever computer that this is now being run on, I've now gone access to the dev user on it. So I can start enumerating the box at this point. And inside of Covenant, I can go and literally just, and a lot of the C2 frameworks are like this, I have a whole slew of tasks that are all set up. So this is me relying on missiles. I don't have to go manual. I don't really have to do a lot of customization and come up with anything crafty. So I guess we're going to see what happens and see if Rob can find out what I'm going to be doing. He's not really paying attention right now. He's looking at the chat. His screen is off. He's just doing his own thing. You guys are listening. All good. So I'm now the dev user. I want to start poking around the box, but I want to be fast. I don't want to spend too much time here. I want to start running some commands. I want to find out who these other users are on the box right now. Now, I'm looking. It looks like just dev is running over here. Interesting. Let's take a look and see if I can find, don't mind me typing kind of like this on a weird angle. It's just a mic in my way. And this, yes. Local group. Boom. So what I'm trying to find out right now, net local, let's get rid of those quotes over there and put that back over there. And this should actually execute a lot better. Got to watch over those quotes and the semicolons, right? So I see inside the administrators group, I see that dev is part of it, and this is really good. As a local admin, I probably have access to some things. So I can start running and look around and run Mimikatz for post-exploitation and maybe start trying to dump some information off this machine. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. Let it do its thing. see if we can get back from that. Okay, so I'm still getting some errors, and I can try a couple more things. Let's elevate my privilege. Let's go into a debug. See if I can get anything out of this. All right, so I'm still not getting any progress. That's okay. This is the kind of thing that sort of happens. I'm starting to hit some walls. But what I want to do is really just start enumerating now at this point. I don't have to go and start poking around the system any further. So I'm just going to start running some commands en masse. Seatbelt is a tool that we can use to just literally enumerate the entire system. And you see what I'm doing is now I'm just going to start spraying these commands, gathering as much intel in the system that I can. I'm hoping that one of these things will give me some information. I'm going to let that task and go in the background. All right. So getting some interesting things. Nothing seems to be jumping out at me right now, but that's okay. I want to be timely. I don't want to be spending too much time in the box. If you look over here in the little scroll wheel, I've got all this information in the system instantly, and that literally took 5.38 seconds. So let's start actually trying to get a form of persistence on the box because I'm taking too long and I might lose my connection. I don't want to mess around. So what I want to do now is I want to start uploading some files. So let me go and poke around. There's typically the off chance that I can get inside of the temp directory, and hopefully that works just fine. All right, so it looks like I'm inside there. Perfect. I want to do some upload now. And what I want to do, I have some payloads that I've created over here. Let's drop something called winsvc.exe. That's a very legitimate looking binary. So I'm going to drop that inside there. Perfect. Okay, so it looks like the upload's complete. Since I have access to the box, some local admin, I'm doing well. I've now dropped some malware. I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can execute this without any issue at this point. Put this inside of program data. Program data is by default hidden inside of systems. All right. So let's go ahead and execute that. All right. Good. So that's what I was looking for. I know because I've coded this, execution complete is a good sign. That means it's actually executed properly. It's running. I'm good. Now at this point, what I want to do is go ahead and make usage of the tools given to me. I'm going to persist a startup at this point. It's going to run my same C2 launcher code that you saw inside of the Word document. Okay. This is what I want. Now I've dropped my malware. This is going to drop my form of persistence now inside of the system. My malware will hopefully spread, get to other systems, but now I'm going to set up a beacon. I'm going to call this startup.bat. It's going to go inside of the user's startup directory, and hopefully this runs just fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit task and let this go. Okay, startup persistence succeeded. Rob will never know what hit him. Okay, I'm good to go. I've done enough. I need to get out of this. I'm going to drop my connection. Okay, I'm out. So what I've done at this point now is I've gone ahead and through a series of really quick tasks, I did a little bit of enumeration. Nothing was jumping out at me. I did find out that I'm a local admin. That's fantastic. That means I could probably find a way to elevate my privilege further. I have more permissions on that box. I was taking a little bit too long. Nothing was coming out. I ran Mimikatz as a post-exploit framework to be able to figure out if I can get some things, some secrets from registry, from memory, passwords, user credentials, hashes. Didn't really get too much, so I ran what's called seatbelt, which is just a large enumeration script, and that's going to literally go through the entire box, and in 5.3 seconds, I've got everything I really need at this point, and I can go offline now and start looking into it, see what I can do. I've already spent too long on the network, and I want to go and drop some persistence. So I went ahead, I got some malware that I threw on there, I ran it, I didn't get flagged, it's encoded, and I have now dropped a persistence mechanism so that when this computer restarts, when they log in and out, I'm going to get a beacon back in. And now I've exited, I've dropped the connection, so there's no more network traffic going on. And that should have been quick enough that I'm going to fly under the radar. All right, so that's a little quick jaunt through some adversary tactics, covered some of the things we talked about last time. Let me see, I see a question over here. Yeah, definitely you can do so let's do answer live on this one. So someone's asking over here to do a who am I / priv. All right. So what that does is it lets me know the tokens that could be used for impersonation, various system level permissions that can be granted to the account. If I see token impersonation, I can easily pivot and go ahead to system accounts with a greater degree of accuracy and a higher chance to be able to let that fire off and be successful. But that's part and parcel of what I did. I grabbed all the enumeration. In this case, I don't want to go ahead and make too much noise. I just want to get some persistence inside there, and I want to not be caught. I don't want to be noticed. So I can take a look at that offline, and since I haven't been detected, I'm hoping that I can come back on when the user's not paying attention. And if my beacon, if my persistence mechanism is still not caught to that point, then I have free reign. I can take as much time as I want. No one's watching me. No one's going to catch me. But that is a good tool to run. You'll get that enumeration when you run seatbelt and other commands. That'll come for you. Who am I priv is good, but you might as well just run something that's going to collect everything for you all at once. That's sort of the message I want to get across. I don't want to run specific commands. I want to run a script that'll do it all for me and just dump it all for me for evaluation. Cool. Okay. So that is a little bit on the adversary tactic side. I am going to go ahead to Rob at this point. Aha, yes. So now I see questions popping up on logs. Yes, so does the execution of Mimikatz create logs that'll show up on the event viewer? Well, I guess we'll find out, right? So I'm going to get this sent over now to Rob, and he's going to carry off the narration of what's exactly happening over here. So we're going to answer that one live. Go ahead, make Rob the host.
All right. Man, I missed a lot coming in halfway through here.
Oh, hi, Rob. How's your day?
How's it going? This is corny, but let's go with it. So, all right. So I'm obviously, you can tell from our backgrounds here, Anthony's the evil red devil up there on the attack side. I am the honorable and good blue team down here. So this is the beginning of my day. So let's walk you through. I work in the SOC for our organization, and I'm gonna stroll in with my coffee and find what happened last night and try to get to the bottom of any interesting alerts. So picking up where Anthony left off here, jumping right into it. So I sit down at my desk and I stumble upon this interesting looking alert. I know that's kind of hard to read, but we can kind of go through here. So you can see in the top left corner here, it says PowerShell. So we got a PowerShell command that ran. The parent name is command.exe. There's a bunch of stuff in there. But what I'm interested in is if you kind of look down at where that target command line is, we can see some downloads and right here in the middle of the screen now, invoke Mimikatz dump creds. So this is just an example of an alert. This could be any tool, any SIM, or any sort of like, you'll see SOCs have a bunch of different dashboards and tools that they use. Some are proprietary vendor stuff, some are open source things, but this is an example of what I would be seeing in the morning. So I'm definitely interested in this. Mimikatz is it's not a good application to see running in your enterprise unless you're doing a pen test or something. So this is something I need to investigate. So after looking through the logs some more, I determined that this is a incident response activity that we're going to have to switch to guns, which is the topic of today. So I don't have any way using my SIM to get any more information about this machine. I haven't gotten any other alerts or events that I can really use to investigate this. So I'm going to have to connect directly to that machine and go manual. So that's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to connect to this dev machine. Give me 1 second. Okay, so here we are, remote desktop, nothing fancy. So I'm actually logging in to the dev machine. forgive the movie magic here. I wouldn't normally be logging in as dev. I would be logging in as an administrator or some other account that I could use to get on this box. But really, what we're going to do here is try to find the malware that the evil red guys have left in here, or find out what triggered that Mimikatz. Right? That's sort of the clue. We know we got a Mimikatz alert, so now I have to kind of come in here and sort of solve the mystery. I was like, what happened? The alert, so there's a question here. I'll answer live here. The alert that we saw is prompted by what tool? It's generic for this exercise. It could be Carbon Black. It could have been Sentinel-1. It could have been Cylance. Any one of those tools would have given you a similar type of alert. Some of them might give you a little bit more context than others, but in general, that's sort of what you're seeing at that level. Fortune 500 companies, where they have a lot of money, they have really good tools and really good visibility. The lower you go down the stack in the totem pole there, the less visibility you have, the less context you get. So the more manual you're going to have to do these types of triage exercises. So let's get on with it here. So we know Mimikatz ran on this machine. Where do we begin? We have no other clues to begin with. We don't have any IP addresses. We don't have any process names other than PowerShell, which is on every machine. So the first thing that I like to do is look for footholds. And there's various reasons for that, but generally it's the smallest bucket of data to look through. So I want to see, did the attackers set up some sort of way to come back to this machine later? Because it's a very common technique, and there's a lot of good ways to look at that. So you can poke around. I can go in Task Manager and see if there's anything like obvious here. But we're going to come back to this. I don't see it. Nothing stands out here as like malware.exe running. So we're going to come back to that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy over some tools so that I can do some quick triage right on this machine. So I'll paste my tools folder here. And what I've got in here is AutoRuns, Proc Explorer, strings, and zoom it. That's just for the demos in case we need to zoom in on anything. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run AutoRuns. I'm going to run it as administrator so I can see all of the AutoRuns that are running on the machine. This is going to show me all the footholds that are set on this box. So it's going to take a minute to scan. And it's going to basically look in every folder everywhere across the machine and tell me if there's something that's set to run when the computer boots up or when a user logs into this machine. So this should give me a pretty good snapshot. It's not 100%. It's, there's a few things it doesn't see, but for the most part, it catches the most common persistent footholds set up by attackers. It's good just in general as well. You can see for IT purposes, you can just see like, why does my machine take so long to start up, right? You can use this to figure that out. Up across the top, there's a bunch of, toolbars and stuff where I can filter based on what type of startup I might be looking for. But one thing that it really does do, and it helps out us humans, is it color coordinates things for us, or color codes them. So I can easily, just by looking at the screen, tell if something is verified by Microsoft or signed or something that belongs to the system, because the things in red here are not signed. So you can see they're not verified by Microsoft, or like this interesting one right here, it has no signature at all. So it's not signed. And then the yellow ones are not found. It's an old thing or something like that. So really quickly now, I've been able to zoom in on interesting footholds. Like I mentioned, this one here is red. It has no signature, and it's in this interesting directory. To me, this is interesting because it's the startup folder. So a user has access to that folder, and it's going to run every time the machine initializes. So let's take a look at that one. So I can right click on it from here and go to properties, and I'll get this nice little window. So it's a .bat file. It's okay. And then I don't really get anything else there. So let's go over to, let's just look at that file. So I got my Windows Explorer here. I'm just going to paste in the path that I got from AutoRuns, and there it is. There's only one startup .bat in there. So I'm going to go ahead and go to edit so that I can see it, because I don't want to run it if you double click it, right? We don't want to get this person infected again. Okay, so we have a VB script here, or a batch script, sorry, that's running some VB stuff. And this is an encoded command, so I can see that. This is definitely shady, though there are vendors that do stuff like this. Definitely security vendors who do weird stuff like this. So I'm not 100% certain. I need to confirm this is definitely suspicious. So I see there's an encoded command, and I need to know like what that says. So I copied it. I'm gonna use let's use PowerShell to decode this. PowerShell. Sure, I'll run as administrator in case I need to do something with that. And I'm going to just paste this in for the sake of brevity. And what I'm going to do is just decode that. There we go. So paste in here. So the base64 encoding can be done in several ways. I'm opting to do it with PowerShell here because there it is. So that's my PowerShell command. This is just, you know, verbose PowerShell stuff, but here's the key part: from base64 string, and then you put in the base64 encoded command, and then it should spit out plain English to me, not an encoded command, right? So there it is in PowerShell. I hit enter, and here we go. We get this decoded. It's spaced out weird because it's in a different encoding here, but if I copy that out and paste it over here in my notepad, we can see, okay, IEX, this is PowerShell code for execute, right? So it's gonna download something from this URL. So I'm gonna get rid of these spaces here, fix my encoding, but we can see it's connecting to this IP address. This is obviously a private IP address, so this is just for our demo purposes, but it's downloading this PowerShell. That's that PS1 extension. It's downloading that PowerShell command. So, okay, now I'm interested. Now we're on to something. I have an IP address. This is persistence for pulling this grunt down. So we found one part of it, but there's gotta still be something running on this machine. Persistence is usually set. Sometimes malware will run and then die, and then the persistence mechanism will kick it off again. But many times, attackers will want to stay connected to a machine. They want to have some way to talk to the machine and have it run. They don't want to just leave something that will call them back in a day, and then they have to go through that process. They kind of do it in two-stage approaches. So they want to have a persistence mechanism so they can come back, but they also want to have a way to connect to the machine when they need the machine. So we have a clue here. We've got this, IP address. So we're on the right track. So how do we look for running processes and see? I pulled up Task Manager, right? And it gave us the normal Task Manager view, but we're going to actually use something better than Task Manager. So if you've never used Process Explorer, highly recommend it. It's free to download from the Sysinternals suite. And that's what we're going to use. So this is like Task Manager on steroids. It just gives us a lot better view, so we can zoom in on different things and see like what in the world is going on. And you'll notice too, it has the similar like color coded stuff as AutoRuns. So I can easily now scan with my eyeballs and see if something is odd or standing out to me. These red ones are red, but they're red for a different reason generally, because they're running under these Microsoft binaries, and so this one's a little bit different to use, and you got to get used to it. But a lot of this also comes from my experience as a guy working in the SOC for a long time. I also know what is legitimate and what is anomalous or what's fishy looking that I should be looking into more. So I'm going to look through here, and I'm looking for same deal here. I'm looking for signed binaries. That's a quick, easy way to see if something is malicious or not. You can see all of these are Microsoft. There's a few that aren't. Start menu experience examples. Some of these dumb apps that don't have any signatures or publishers. These are like Windows kernel and registry stuff. Like they don't follow the same rules. And then you have a few other ones that are not signed. But if we go down this list, we get to an interesting one down here, right? It's not red, but it's not signed either. So that's interesting to me. That sticks out. So I'm going to go ahead and click on properties on this winservice.exe, which to me also does not look legitimate. It's not running under one of the Windows service hosts. It's not tied to anything else. It's kind of out there on its own. So I don't necessarily want to just upload this to VirusTotal because I don't know if this has like customer data in it. I could get the hash of it and send it up and look it up in some sort of threat intelligence stuff like VirusTotal and see if it's a virus or not. But let's see what I can just gain from immediately looking at it right now. It's in the program data directory. So that's bad. That nothing should be running out of that directory, especially something called winservice.exe. So now my risk profile is going up. My spidey sense is tingling. So what can I gain from this? Is there any IP connections? Doesn't look like it's connecting to anything. Security wise, there's not going to be much in there. Something I generally tend to do right off the bat when I find malware or something that I suspect of malware is I want to look at strings. So we can do it from this window. It can be kind of crazy to go through here. This is Go build ID. So when you see Go build ID, that means this is a Go binary. This is written in Golang. This is not a C binary, not C++ or Java or anything like that. So that's interesting, especially something called WinService, right? So you can see I'm starting to check these boxes of suspicion. Let me, instead of doing it in this little tiny window, I would like to, let's go to PowerShell here. Caesars dev, right? I'm going to go to my tools directory, and I'm actually going to use strings here and dump strings from that binary. Program data, and then it was called winservice.exe. Let's write it out to stir.txt. Should be in my tools directory. So I can also pull this down later for further analysis, but let's take a look at it right now. So this is just going to dump everything that is legible basically from this binary. Oh, whoops, I have to accept the EULA for strings.exe. Let's do that again. I don't want that. I want strings. Okay. It's still running. There we go. All right, so what am I looking for here now? You need to pick up the pace a little bit here, but what am I looking for? So I already know this is a Go binary. Let's see if I can find anything that has to do with connecting to a command and control server, some network resource. So first thing I'll do is just look for HTTP. If I can find HTTP in here, I don't need a match case. Okay, so we found HTTP. Oh, check that IP address out. That's the same one we found in the startup script. So it looks like it's trying to hit icon.js. I'll go keep track of that over there and verify that that is, yep, 10.8.0.118. Interesting. So what else is in here? Find another one. Okay, so there's other strange domains in here. Let's copy this one. Whoops, what happened there? So I think it ends there. Let's copy this out and put it in there. So what I would do now is, I mean, it looks like there's other ones in there, but let me let me look this up. So I'm going to go to VirusTotal and put in the URL. Like I mentioned earlier, this isn't customer information, so I'm not worried about uploading something to VirusTotal that's going to, you know, have secrets in it or something company proprietary. Come on. Slow Internet Explorer. Just spelled it wrong. So a chat question here is it a good idea to upload the sample to VirusTotal, or maybe this may alert attackers that we're analyzing the sample? Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. There's several reasons you don't want to upload things to VirusTotal. And then what I'm doing now is I'm looking up artifacts. So if I go here and then I paste in that URL that I found, then I'm not really prompting people that I'm looking at their stuff. I'm searching the VirusTotal database, so I'm not actually uploading any files or sending any new information. So this is going to take a second. And then what else can we find while that pulls up in there? So there are other URLs in here, which I'm not going to go through each one of them, but you get the point. So now what else do I want to look for? Something else I usually look for is there a file path in the malware that references something something else I can find, like another clue. So I might just do like a C:, because that's super common to have a C drive. Okay, so here now I see C users, app data. So this is the persistence path. Are we missing a piece there? Start. There it is, startup.bat, wrapped to the next line. So now we have, let me just hit enter there so it puts it on the same line. You can see there we have our startup.bat, and they have like a placeholder there so they can customize it whenever they install it. So we've now tied this malware to our persistence mechanism. So now we know they're tied together. We know the startup mechanism probably kicks this thing off and downloads this binary or something like that, right? This is my theory. This is my hypothesis I'm building as I'm doing this. I now know, right, that definitively there is malware on this box. I found the malware. I don't know what's going on with VirusTotal here, but that's not coming up. Anyway, so we won't wait on that. So where do we go from here? I've pretty much concluded my incident response here. I know I need to quarantine this machine, take it off the network. I need to remove that persistence, that startup file from the startup menu, and I need to kill that process, right? I can do that from here. I just kill this, kill it. And it doesn't pop back up right away. So, because we can see in the startup folder, it only boots up when the machine boots up or logs in. So now I can go remove that startup folder and, or the startup bat script, and then this thing shouldn't come back. So we've successfully remediated to this point, unless we find anything else in subsequent forensic activities. We could do all kinds of stuff like dump memory and look for other running processes, look for rootkits, look for all sorts of stuff like that. One other potential thing that we might want to do when we get on this machine and go through the incident response process is, how did the malware get here? How did the attacker land on this machine to begin with? That's a pretty hard thing to do. You kind of need to do more forensics to figure that out, like looking at the shim cache and processes that have run, look at the event logs to see the order of things that run. An easy thing you can do is go to the downloads directory, because 90% of these enterprise attacks come from emails and phishing campaigns and files downloaded. So, I mean, this is a developer machine. There's a bunch of stuff on here. But yesterday, I'm looking in my time frame, right, of like when I got my alert. I see 7-zip. That could be something weird. That could have been a tainted 7-zip downloaded somewhere. It's Microsoft JDK. here's a Word document. So, I mean, I wouldn't normally be opening up documents on people's machines, but this is just to show you kind of full circle. Okay, this is a shady looking phishing document. I can see enable macros. I would take this document back, dissect it, look at the macro, and then eventually I would find what Anthony planted in there and this user fell for. All right, so that concludes everything. I know that was pretty fast paced, but we're here to answer questions.
You got me this time, Rob, but not next time.
Maybe next time, Anthony.
Yeah. Yeah, feel free to ask away. I know that was we did go a little bit fast. We try to be as slow as we could and cover lots of topics and some introductory material to it all. But that essentially is, that's actually a really common scenario. And then hopefully you have someone like Rob that can come in with some incident response expertise to go in and triage the machine.
So we got a couple questions here. How can the attacker delete evidence to cause the blue team, I'm sure that's what that meant, to have a hard time finding evidence? And then could you use wire? So the first question, how does an attacker clean up after themselves? There's various methods. You could delete logs, but that in and of itself is an artifact. If I show up on the box and I see all the logs are gone, or there's like a chunk of time when the logs are missing, something's fishy. So that makes me, more suspicious of what's going on. So sometimes covering your tracks is actually creating more tracks. The fact of the matter is most of these attacks go unnoticed because that Mimikatz alert that we started with, that might get brushed under the rug, or maybe I have 10,000 Mimikatz alerts and I don't have the time in the day to go through each one of them. So these attacks just get, left on the table. And this is why I don't know what the stat is now, but there's obviously older stats going around that the mean dwell time of an attack in a network is like 6 months or more before they actually find the attack and start doing anything about it. So yeah, that's super common. And then could you use Wireshark as well to check for a connection to the C2 server? You could use Wireshark. However, Wireshark is not going to tell you the process that's actually doing the connection. It's going to show you the traffic, and it'll show you your local IP address and what port it's happening on. So then you could use maybe netstat or something to tie the port to the process and then continue your search through there. Sysinternals tools like Proc Explorer, that TCP tab that I clicked on, it was empty at this point, but if there was network traffic going on, that tab can give you some of that activity, and then you can see, oh, okay, it is connecting to something. It might show you the domain name that it resolves to. But Wireshark would give you more of a view into the network analysis view of things. So you want to see, how is this malware talking to the C2 and what is it sending it? Wireshark is your tool for that. So Anthony, probably for you, the next question.
I mean, how can we delete event logs from Covenant? You mean like Covenant itself, or how can we hide the process from showing up in Task Manager like a rootkit itself? In a second, my mic's kind of bouncing around. So just to kind of clarify on that, I mean, from Covenant itself, I'm not going to be interested in deleting my logs if that's what you meant. If you meant deleting event logs generated by Covenant, you're not going to see logs generated by Covenant per se on the attacking machine. You'll see my PowerShell commands, you'll see trusted user activity, but there's no indication other than perhaps HTTP posts and GET requests that are going on that might reveal like user agents. So what I would do is I'd be hiding my user agent activity. I'd be trying to spoof myself as other users with my my web activity kind of beaconing requests back and forth, because every command that I was sending was sending the commands through HTTP to that C2 agent for my grunt to perform the commands itself. So that's where I'm going to be more concerned about trying to hide myself from.
So what if traffic is encrypted? You only find the IP host, but not what's going on. Is there a way to decrypt that? Traditionally, yes. You could do that with older TLS 1.1 and 1.2. You can, I mean, enterprise companies have devices that can decrypt HTTPS TLS traffic. But moving to TLS 1.3, which is becoming the standard, you can no longer man in the middle that traffic. You can't break that encryption anymore. So yeah, if the traffic is encrypted, you're going to have a hard time figuring out what the malware is doing and what it's actually sending upstream. Basically, at that point, you really have reverse engineering is going to be your next best bet to figure out what this malware is actually doing and what it's sending. And is there a way to delete specific logs generated by PowerShell on the event logs while leaving intact the user activity? No, because you're literally deleting the log out of the list. So if you have a bunch of logs and you have one PowerShell command in there and you delete that one PowerShell command, that's going to be pretty hard to notice. However, deleting logs also creates logs. So you're not immune to, you can't just go in and splice it out. You know, these guys are smarter than that. So they've put in measures to detect if somebody's manipulating the logs. Another thing you might have is if you have an EDR or you have some other tool that is doing logging, now you have Windows event logs to clean up, and you have the EDR logs and AV logs and other stuff that's doing like this file monitoring. And if that AV, or if in our case, if we had an EDR on the machine that was sending the logs to the cloud, you can't delete it because the log already got sent up to the cloud. So yeah, from a tactics standpoint, from the red team, you have to be very cognizant and conscious of what logs you are producing. And that comes down to practice, that comes down to reverse engineering, research and development, figuring that stuff out. You have to run these tools on a Windows system, like where you're going to be attacking, in order to understand how noisy is this attack. When I run this covenant command with Mimikatz, like what logs am I producing? You need to know that. Otherwise, you're like on script kiddie level, just blasting commands out like Anthony was doing. Consciously, he knew he was doing that. But if he was going to try to be more stealthy, he would have been much more deliberate about what commands he actually ran. Potentially, he wouldn't even use Covenant and PowerShell. He would use something else. Mm-hmm. The higher you go up the APT ladder, Advanced Persistent Threat ladder, the more custom the tools are going to be and the more quiet they're going to be. But from the blue team perspective, yeah, Remy, Cobalt Strike, exactly. So, but from the blue team perspective, there's always going to be artifacts. You cannot run anything on a computer without leaving any artifacts, period. Yeah. No matter what anybody tells you. If you run on malware on a machine, I guarantee you we can find it. It's just you have to know the methods of doing it. You have to know where to look, and you have to obviously have visibility on that machine.
Yeah, like going back to, I know people like to say that there's just this ability perhaps to clean up your tracks, like find the specific log and what you did. Like Rob said, there's just so many things that could generate events that's almost counterproductive from the attacker's perspective. I mean, from Windows itself, it's right. You cannot actually go in and delete specific log entries. It will just delete the log itself. You can't filter it out and say, I want that one gone specifically. It doesn't work that way. Windows by design doesn't work that way. So adversaries aren't concerned so much about that. They want to make a little bit of noise by trusted users, trusted ports and services and protocols. They want to hide within all that noise because there is so much noise. That's really the challenge. You don't really need to obfuscate yourself that much. You just need to be quick or slow, depending on your engagement and what you want to do. But hiding your tracks completely isn't necessarily the most concern.
Right.
Yeah. So sorry. Do you teach all this at Level Effect? If so, it sounds like you get a more practical experience than just reading a book and taking a test. Yeah. So what we're doing right now is what you would be doing at Level Effect. If you're inside of our bootcamp and you're training with us, you're going to go and learn how to triage, just how Rob did. You're going to learn how to use sysinternals tools. You're going to learn how to go manual, dig deep, know what to look for, and comb through the noise and try to hunt down exactly what happened on compromised systems. You'll do this live and you'll do this on your own as well too. And then we're also going to teach you the tactics that I was showing. We're going to be a little bit more in depth with it and kind of walk you through these exploits, and you'll be carrying them out yourself. We're actually going to teach you some of the concepts behind actually bypassing MZ and Defender itself. You're not actually going to have any problem. We'll show you exactly how easy it is. It's kind of scary how easy it is, and why why it continues to be bypassed, so to speak. But yeah, these are all things that we'll cover. We're very hands-on.
Yeah,
You can't read a book.
Yeah, this is an easy example of what you would be learning in Level Effects course.
No.
So with all these protections, how do attacks like the ones caused by Revil and Kaseya and SolarWind happened? So they're all different attacks, but for example, like Kaseya, that had there was a lot of moving parts with Kaseya. Basically, the attackers got access to Kaseya's like command and control service, and they were able to push ransomware to the customers of Kaseya. So Kaseya is an RMM tool, a remote management tool that lets IT companies manage thousands of computers, from one panel. So if you can get access to that panel and you can upload your malware, boom, you just deployed your malware to thousands of computers across the world. So that's one example of that. Some of the other ones, there's a lot of reasons why attacks still happen. One example we were just talking about was lack of visibility, and it takes 6 months for people to find attacks even happen in their network because there's so much data. There's not enough people in these positions that are able to interpret these logs and understand what's going on. So attackers can kind of have a free reign in a lot of organizations because there's not enough visibility. People can't see the malware they're using. They're not getting any alerts, so they don't think anything is wrong until something is really wrong, and that day is a bad day for the security team. Another one here. I read about some malwares being certified or appearing as certified. What other ways could persistent malware be more easily hidden or less identifiable? And what other ways beyond your general experience could you use to find malware in a list of ongoing processes? That's a can of worms, but let's chip a little bit away from that. So yes, you can certify malware. You can sign it. You can take a signature from something else and masquerade the signature on your binary, kind of like copy the signature over to your binary so it kind of looks legitimate. And my little example here that was simplified of using an unsigned binary, while it is common, most malware still isn't signed. Most other attacks that are more advanced won't actually use a binary like Anthony did. They won't drop a exe file, for example. What they'll do is they'll inject into another process that is legitimate, and then it's much harder to see from the running process list like we looked at. It's much harder to see what's running. At that point, you don't really have much to go on in the process list unless there's something obvious about it, but usually there isn't. So you have to use the other two methods that I was just talking about. You have to look at persistence. You have to see if they set up a foothold. That foothold should lead you to something else. It'll give you a clue to what process this thing gets injected into. If you don't have any footholds, then you have to look at the network. You have to fire up Wireshark, fire up Netstat, and see if some strange connection is happening, tie that connection back to a process, and now you've found, okay, there's this svc host.exe is making this random connection to some IP address outside of our organization and downloading files. So you have to use a method to do this. You can't just go in and I see the malware running in the process list. Like that's usually not going to work. So you have to use other methods to look for clues. Hopefully that answers your question there.
Answering some inquiry on the bootcamp itself. I'm just giving you some info over there.
Yeah. So right. All of our course information, if you're interested in that, is on our website, just leveleffect.com. All the info is there. We're not here just trying to push our class, although this is an example of what we do in our class. But this is more just something we want to do to raise awareness about not just the cool attacker techniques that are available out there and the tools that you can use on a red team, obviously in legal circumstances, but also from the blue team perspective. We don't get a lot of perspective from the blue team and how defenders do their job. The SOC position, or being a SOC analyst or security engineer, is a very unglamorous job right now, but it's a super necessary one. We don't have enough of them, and a lot of the people coming into the industry don't really understand how to do this job, and it takes them, training to get them built up. So that's kind of our motto here, we're going to teach you the red team stuff and the blue team stuff so that you can better understand the whole picture instead of just learning how to run some tools and, check some boxes. That doesn't really make sense.
Right. A lot of what we're trying to show today too is just, for myself, I'm kind of goofing around being the attacker of it's easy, right? There's buttons I can click, there's things that can do it all for me. Trying to give you a bit of a landscape idea of you don't need to be that sophisticated to be able to launch these kinds of attacks. I put something in the chat just a little bit above talking about those EDR solutions that I mentioned earlier on in the presentation. But I mean, 3 out of 11 were able to detect my phishing email that I sent in. So that should give you a bit of an indicator of when I said it actually is pretty effective, even though you think it's quite simple. These phishing emails are essentially the bulk of how these attacks really begin, outside of 0 days where we've heard web shells can be spun up, perhaps from Exchange servers and other open vulnerabilities that don't have any patches. Things like that is like other ways and other vectors in, or internal disgruntled employees, or people just pretending to be employees they find their way into. But phishing campaigns are huge. And you would think that we as humans are getting better at this stuff, and there's more training available, but it's actually getting worse. As we talked about in the last presentation, that the stats from last year to this year, I think it went up. I can't remember the number, but it was like 34 or 30%. What was the actual click-through rate of these phishing campaigns? Could be wrong. I can't remember the stat exactly, but it was around that number. So it is actually very effective. And then if only 3 of the 11 EDR solutions could pick up on that attack itself, you can do the math, right? It's a really high probability that this attack for the initial compromise will actually work.
Yep. And not to be a bummer here, but these types of attacks are only going to increase because more and more open source red team tools are made every day, shared on Twitter, blasted on Twitter. And there's an ongoing debate about whether that's ethical or not, but it is what it is. And that's the reality. And not only that, but more and more YouTube videos and stuff come out teaching people how to use these tools. And then they make the moral choice to use them, negatively, nefariously, illegally. They choose to do that, and that's just going to increase more and more in the coming years. So this is just going to be a bigger and bigger problem. This is why cybersecurity is constantly, like, things are on fire. It's a giant dumpster fire in my opinion, but that's what we're trying to remediate here. So any other questions? We don't want to keep this running all day, but we're happy to answer any questions, and you guys can feel free to email us, ping us, hit us up from our website. We have the contact forms or whatever. We're happy to chat. We're going to try to put out more content like this, maybe not in the webinar format, just because of timing and people's day and things like that, but maybe more just like YouTube content. And we'd appreciate everybody's support there. Okay, we got one other question. Are ISIS known for having any cyber threats? ISIS, probably not directly ISIS, but I would not be surprised if ISIS works with others to affect their agenda. There are many groups out there. I mean, it's not just government organizations or like terrorist organizations like ISIS. There's just cybercrime organizations that will sell you their services. So if you can just contact them and say, hey, I want to do this, or I want access to this organization, or I want these files, it'll cost you, but they can do it for you. There's rent a bot services. You can go online and rent, a botnet out there to, take down your enemy's website, whatever it might be. There's a market for it. So I would not be surprised if that's the methods that they use instead of having their own cybersecurity organization inside of ISIS. They might just pay somebody to do it for them.
Yeah, it's probably safe to assume that essentially any threat, whether they're just hacktivists or advanced or nation state, military, etc., essentially cyber power is just part of life at this point. It's like having a military and having an arsenal. Your cyber prowess, whether, like Rob said, whether someone is doing it with you or not, you can probably just expect that incidents will take place from these threat actors. When are the next webinars? Well, Rob, next
We'll
week.
see.
No.
No promises. Yeah, webinars are a unique format for us. So we'll talk about it internally and get some dates out there whenever we come up with the next program here. Otherwise, like I mentioned, YouTube, we'll try to do these same formats too, and give you that perspective. But
yeah, let us know.
We enjoyed having you too. So thanks for chiming in.
Feel free to pop in our Discord and talk to us. If you got ideas you want us to make content as well too, and we're happy to. Instead of us coming up with ideas that we think will be helpful, like just let us know what you think would be really helpful to you, and we'll come up with that stuff too. Always open to ideas.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, we definitely will. Yeah, for sure.
So get on our mailing list if you're not already. Again, that's all on our website. So just set yourself up there, and you'll get all of the notifications from anything else we put out. So, all right. With that said, thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for being a part of our event and for great questions. So yeah, till next time.
Till next time. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you again.